thing you can do to organize in Maryland is to help us in Virginia. If we do well on Super Tuesday, that'll turbocharge the campaign and put us in a really good position come the end of April. So whatever you're doing, please focus on helping us in Virginia, because that's where you can make the most difference. So I will turn it over to Sonal to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you, Baltimore. This is great to have this many people here on a Friday night. I know there's a lot of things going on, so really appreciate you all coming out to learn about Pete and to support Pete. Really appreciate it. My name is Sonal Shah. I am the National Policy Director for the campaign. I am a professor by trade at Georgetown University. I'm on a leave of absence from Georgetown. Go Hoyas! And have joined the campaign as a volunteer in April. I joined full-time as a policy director in June and moved to South Bend in August. So I'm on some indefinite period of time leave of absence from Georgetown University, hopefully for a while. And so what I wanted, I will tell you a little bit about the policymaking process and just give you sort of a bit of a behind the scenes format of how we do it and what we do. And Chike will talk a little bit more about why policy matters and just from his own experience and what he's done and why he joined the campaign as a expert volunteer working with us in developing the Douglas Plan. So before I go into the policymaking process, I want to just echo what Josh said. We are not at a policy part of our campaign anymore. We are very much a part of the organizing part of our campaign. And why that matters is Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada. Really, this is about getting people out to vote. And we need to get as many people out to vote as possible because we have the content. We are working on the politics and the organizing now, and that is the most important part of the campaign we can be in. So all of you matter because the number of phone calls you can make, the number of people you can call, the number of friends you can call in Virginia, in any of the Super Tuesday states, California, Texas, the better it is for us. Because we have to show momentum. It's not just about whether we win Nevada, whether we win South Carolina, or whether we win Iowa. It's showing momentum that there are a lot of Pete supporters and the country sees that Pete has support. Not just in pockets, but all over the country. And we're in a sprint. Tomorrow is Nevada. A week later is South Carolina. March 3rd is 14 states at one time going into their primaries. 40% of all delegates will be awarded right after March 3rd. And then we go into a primary every week until April 4th. So we don't have a ton more. Is it working?
Four primaries every week.
Yeah, 4. But there's a primary a week that we have to work through. So if March 3rd is one primary, 14 states, there's probably 4 for all of the other weeks that we are going through. You're right. Thank you so much. But it's a sprint. And that means we need all of your time, as much time as you can give us to help us get there. So just quickly on the policy-making process, when I first joined the campaign, Pete sat down with us and said, here are the list of policies that are important to us. The first policy that was the most important to him, this is even before I came on full-time, was national service. And the reason national service is important to him is he served in the military, but he said we need to create a common experience for everybody in the country. So whether you serve your community or whether you serve in the military, it's a common experience of what it means to serve your country. And that's why national service was first. The second policy we're actually working on, and Chike will talk more about it, is the Douglas Plan. And that was in process long before, I think even before I joined Chike. And the process of creating that was super important. So we'll walk through that a little bit. But when we sat down and wrote down these policies, what Pete asked us to do is to give us information. He gave us an outline of why he was interested, what he wanted to see in a policy. We then bring a group of experts together. So in the domestic policy side of the campaign, we have about 650 experts who volunteer with the campaign. And that's everything from healthcare to education, to mental health, to women's health, K through 12, infrastructure, transportation. It's a little bit of everything because there's expertise everywhere in many different pockets. And we have about 420 on our national security and foreign policy side volunteering with us. So that means at times, and Chike can attest to this, They're giving 30 to 40 hours a week of volunteer time, but helping us build out these policies. And once we sort of write a policy or draft of it, Pete looks at it, then he gives us feedback. He'll say, these are the things. Sometimes it's written feedback, sometimes it's in conversation. It's a bit of both, and it's always a combination. But by the time we're done with each policy, Pete has at least read it 4 times. Just imagine, your president has read all of the policies I know that's hard to believe today, but he has read every single one of them at least 4 times. So he knows what's in his policies. He's not just speaking when you hear him speak. It's not a talking point. It's something that he actually believes in. And it's something that he has spent time on. It's something that he has thought through. It's something he is constantly learning about. We were just on a call with him because he was asking us more questions about what else should he be thinking about. This is what he heard in Nevada. Have we looked into public lands, which we just raised a public lands policy today, because he had been hearing that and said, we need to release something, we need to do more. So we're at that stage where our last policy today was public lands. We did housing on Monday. We'll release an AAPI policy next week, but really we won't do that many more policies because that's not really at the stage of the campaign we're in. But what we do is take the time to make sure, and Pete's asked us 3 questions in every policy that we do. 1, will it make a difference in people's lives? Is it actually going to help people, or is this just a theoretically good idea? 2, can we get it done? So it can't just be something that's a pipe dream, it's got to be something we can actually get done. And what does it take to get it done? And 3, who do we need to bring to the table to make sure we can get it done? Who are the communities that need to be at the table? Who else should we be bringing in? Who else needs to be part of the coalition to make that happen, to get it done? He leads every policy with values. It's not a written document, it's not a theoretical document, it is a values-based document. And that is where his values are. That's the question, those are the questions he's always asking. Because he thinks about it. He thinks about it from his city. He thinks about it from his community. He thinks about it from his county. He thinks about it from his state. That's what matters to him, because he wants to know, will it help somebody in his own community? Will it help somebody in other communities? What will other mayors say? What will other executives say? He starts from a very bottoms up approach. And that's just who he is at the core of who he is. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chike. He's going to talk a little bit more about the values he has, but why he joined the campaign, and also give you a little bit more insight.
Let me just first off emphasizing what Sonal started with, which is to get to Maryland, we have to get through Virginia. And so if you have time, our rally on Sunday in Fairfax County is what time?
3:45.
3:45. Thank you. If you have time, please make it down.
It's free.
It's free.
And they've moved it. It's now in Arlington.
Oh, it's not. Oh, my name's Chike Agua, and I'm from Prince George's County. I see some Prince George's County people here. When I first came to Maryland, I actually lived in Mount Vernon, not too far from here. And so Baltimore is very close to my heart, and I really thank all of you for being here. I joined the campaign almost a year ago as a volunteer. I saw Pete on CNN for the first time. I'd heard of him, but when I saw what he had to say, I said, oh, that might be the guy. And I had a friend randomly who had been to Pete and Chasten's wedding. And I said, hey, I actually know some people there. And the thing is, there weren't that many people there at the time, so it wasn't that hard. And I kind of I had a phone call, and I was very formal. I sent them my resume, and I thought it was like the first. I thought it was like the phone screen. And then the phone call was over, and I had like an email address like 3 days later, so on and so forth. There was only like 20 people at that time anyway. And when I joined the campaign, I saw something in him that I thought should be in our president. And I'll be honest, I was going to say at the beginning that I had a really clear idea why. What I want to talk to you about now is why I joined, why I stayed, and what has kept me going through this process. And for me, it boils down to, and I've got as someone who used to do some consulting, I break it into threes. Let me start with the president, let me start with the phone call, and then let me start with the choice. And let me tell you about each. So when I think about the president that I want to talk about is Lyndon Baines Johnson. And so about 3 years ago, I got to meet his daughter, Linda Baines Johnson. She's about 73 years old. And I got to meet her, and I went up to her and I basically said, ma'am, I can't thank your father, but I'm going to thank you. Because without your father and the policies that he authored, I wouldn't be here. And those policies, two of which are very obvious, one of which is not. One of those policies is the Civil Rights Act of 1964, without which I wouldn't be allowed to be in this establishment and drink with you. The second is the Voting Rights Act, which, frankly, Super Tuesday would be a very boring day for me because I would not be able to do that. The third policy is one that's less obvious, and it is the Immigration and Naturalization Act of 1965. And what that act did was it overturned the quotas for how many people from different countries can come to the United States and be here. That matters for me because my parents are from a small, out-of-the-way village in Nigeria that most Nigerians themselves will never go to and will never visit. None of my grandparents went past middle school. My parents were born colonial subjects to the British. They had Peace Corps volunteers in their classrooms, and what changed their lives forever is that my dad got a scholarship to come study at the University of Texas in Austin, and my mom got a scholarship to come study at Rutgers University in New Jersey. And literally without those policies signed by that president, I would not be here. And so when you think about what the impact of a president and policy is, I'm going to use the words of Baltimore's own Elijah Cummings, which is there will be impact on faces that you will never see, voices you will never hear, and names you will never know. So when we think about policy, that's what this is about. About white papers and numbers and a bunch of Excel sheets that we've all done, but that's what it's about. There's going to be someone like me someday whose life was different, but someone he never met. Well, let me go next to the phone call. And the phone call that I want to talk about was the phone call where we got a phone call from the campaign, I think it was from Tyler, to say, hey, Pete wants to talk about ideas to increase racial equity in the United States of America. And let me tell you what I remember about that phone call. Number one, it was about probably 10 of us on the phone call, and it was the most diverse and most impressive collection of people that I'd ever been on the phone with. I literally thought I'd called into the wrong phone lines. I said clearly what this season meant for me. Of all races, all genders, all geographies, all experts in their own fields, from healthcare to housing, to education to entrepreneurship, all on this phone call. And what that showed me about Pete was that he is so smart to understand that he doesn't know it all. Mm-hmm. And that would be helpful right now in many of our leaders to be that smart. Yeah. Here's the next thing I remember about the phone call. We all had sent him memos on our various topics beforehand. I did entrepreneurship, someone else did incarceration, someone else did healthcare. And what they did was, and I think it was also from Tyler, they sent us all his notes afterward. Because he had written in the margins, and literally there almost was no white left. He had written the memos, he had read them beforehand, and during our calls, he literally would write our names and say things that he said in responses. Again, for those of you who have worked for politicians, that is not usual behavior. Because reading is important. We're going to bring that back to the Oval Office. But here's the third thing that I remember from that call, and it was a question that he asked us. And it was in that question he proved to me that he should be president. We're going through all these policy areas, talking about, at times smart people try and, show off how smart they are. He stopped us after a while, and he said, what would be the benefit to the United States of America if we cured systemic racism? And we all kind of went silent. And initially we kind of responded with platitudes and things like that. And he stopped us again and he said, no, what would be the actual impact if we eliminated systemic racism in the United States of America? And then we actually started to say, well, all right, if you get rid of the attainment gap in education between black and white folk, you get $1.5 trillion. And if you do it in housing, you get this many hundreds of billions. And he said, calculate that answer for me, and then get me a plan that does that. And it was in that he proved to me that he should be president. Because think about the question he asked. What is the benefit to the United States of America? Not to black people, not just to Latino people, but to the country. Because he understands that this is an American problem. And if we solve it, America benefits. And imagine if we had a president who thought that way. And it was in that moment where I said I made the right choice. Let me end off with a choice. And so I'm going to ask all of you to do something with me. I promise you, just stay with me. And I'm going to ask all of you to close your eyes. I'm going to ask all of you to close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to think about the person who you love most in this world. It might be a spouse. It might be a parent. It might be someone who raised you. For me, it's my son, Kalechi. He'll be 3 on St. Patrick's Day. He's starting toddler soccer soon. And think about that person, and now think about in whose hands are you willing to put their future? For me, when I think about whose hands in which I'm willing to put my son Kalechi's future, the edge of the answer I come to is Pete Buttigieg. That's the choice that we're talking about. Think about all those people, and that's what that choice means. And also think about, again, the people whose faces you will never see, whose names you will never know, whose voices you will never hear. That's who this is about. That's why this is important. That's why Super Tuesday is important. That's why April 28th here in Maryland is important. That's why November 9th, I believe, in general is going to be important. Because those people that you love and the people that you don't even know yet, their lives are going to be changed by it. So again, I really want to thank you all so much for being here. Good to be back home here in Maryland, and happy to take any questions.